Let's get into Kobbie Mainoo, because Kobbie Mainoo is staying at Manchester United. We've been really worried. I've been really worried about what the future might hold for Kobbie Mainoo over the last few months. He's not been in the team. He wasn't really championed by Ruben Amorim. He wasn't really liked by Ruben Amorim. You just had the feeling that as much as Amorim was saying he has a plan and he wants Kobbie to be the best player that he can be, he wasn't getting in the team. This is a talented lad who needs to play. These are his formative years and he needs minutes and he needs the opportunity to go and shine and develop and become the player that we all hope he can become. I've said on the podcast before that I think one day, potentially, he could become United captain, potentially. The free Kobbie t-shirt, I don't like that, but I'm just glad now that I think with the departure of Ruben Amorim, that chapter has kind of been brushed over. That chapter is closed, and now we can look forward again. And Kobbie Mainoo played alongside Casemiro in midfield against Manchester City at the weekend and absolutely stormed it. He was brilliant. Now, I don't know who my man of the match was still. I think there were so many players in that game who played so well. Bruno played really well. Casemiro played really well. Mainoo played really well. The centre-back pairing played brilliantly as well. And boom, I could go through all of the players that played the other day, and I think most of them would have got 8s or 9s on ratings if I'd have done ratings. But Mainoo was great as well, and it was a good opportunity to show what he was about again, give people a reminder that this is how good this guy is. And that Semenyo feint has been, I've seen it on loop loads of times over the last few days on social. And look, that is what United have been missing. And I think it's good now that we've moved past this chapter of uncertainty and doubt. We know the way that Ruben Amorim was trying to set the team up, or was setting the team up with the system that he was playing. It did not suit Kobbie Mainoo at all. And I had previously thought that maybe there would be a point where if United sign a new midfielder, say a Carlos Baleba or something like that, the ideal partner in that midfield too, in that old system, for Kobbie Mainoo, maybe he could find his way back into the team. But it just got to the point where Mainoo was pushing to leave on loan. He was doing that at the start of the season. He was doing that in the later weeks in December as well. The noise kept growing, but then obviously the change was made with Ruben Amorim. And I think now we have brought in Michael Carrick, and he's been on record previously as saying how good a talent Kobbie Mainoo is, how he would use him. Thinks he's more of a player that can move into the attack, and that's where his best assets lie, and that's how he would use him. Now he's in the team. He played a bit deeper the other day. I think you would expect that against a team like Manchester City. You probably expect similar against Arsenal at the weekend as well. But in games where United are expected to win, I think they have Fulham coming up in a couple of weeks' time, maybe Kobbie will get the license to move forward a little bit more and affect games and affect attacks a little bit more. If teams are going to sit in, that's really where we could probably see Kobbie showing his best self in the final third as well, potentially. I mean, you just look at him and you think this is a talent that is as good as anything that's come out of the United Academy in a generation, potentially. I don't know if I'm overstating that, but you see the talent there. There's high hopes for him. He's still only 20 years old. There's been a lot of hype around him for a long time. Ever since he got into the United team in the first place, he's been incredibly impressive. And look, I say that he hasn't been brilliant when he's had opportunities to come off the bench under Ruben Amorim specifically, but under Erik ten Hag, he was brought in by him and was just given the opportunity, and he looked undroppable, scored the winning goal in the FA Cup final, has played for England in a Euro 2024 final as well. And we all just hope that Kobbie would develop and become like the one. United would spend 100 million quid on Kobbie Mainoo if he played somewhere else. Like, you just know that would be the case. So it's good that he's back in the team now. He's only played one game so far. He was really good in it against City. But I think you can expect now that with United only having 16 games left in the Premier League, that he will be on the team sheet from the start in pretty much every game, providing he's free of injury. And the latest, this comes from the Mail. It came from Simon Jones a couple of days ago now. I'm a little bit late to this, but I think it is worth talking about still. Kobbie Mainoo is preparing to stay at Manchester United this month after being restored to the first team by Michael Carrick. He was pushing to leave for Napoli on loan after being restricted to sub-appearances under Ruben Amorim. However, Carrick gave Mainoo his first start of the season in the derby on Saturday, and has encouraged the England midfielder that he's in his plans going forward if he maintains his form. And look, there's obviously the question about the contract. I think he has a contract until 2027 with an option for a further year, but he's among the lowest paid players in the squad. I think if I remember rightly, this you never know with these numbers really, but I think you're looking at around £20,000 a week, which is a contract that he signed around the time or just before he actually got in the first team picture in the first place. So he's been wanting a new deal. Obviously, the fact that he's been out of the first team has meant that like the relationship has drifted apart and the talks have essentially stopped. But I think Kobbie's got to know that A, United are moving in the right direction, and that B, he is a part of the plans as well. Otherwise, what's the point signing the contract, you know? But I think it's good now that Carrick has immediately made an impression and that things are starting to change. I would imagine that the club will try again to get this contract renewed, because Kobbie is definitely worth a lot more to Manchester United than the price on his contract, that the salary is on his contract. Absolutely is. I think there's been previous suggestions that he was looking for money in the region of 180k a week, and I don't know whether that's. I think that's more of his representatives, obviously, and that's a problem. I don't agree that he should be on money like that, because I think United are trying to enforce a new wage structure. You just look at players like Ahmad. I put him probably in this bracket of players like Ahmad and players like maybe Lenny Yoro as well, of that age, who are on I think really, if you're looking at this, he should probably be landing at around about £120,000 a week, I think, based on my previous, or what I remember about the wage structure. United need to get that corrected, and they have some big players leaving this summer as well. Casemiro likely to leave, Harry Maguire possibly leaving as well, but may end up signing. Both of them may end up signing reduced term contracts. I think that's the only way that they will end up staying. But I think it's important that United get that in line and make sure that they don't overpay their players, and make sure that they fall into line and that they've been trying to cut costs everywhere. And it's not been popular at all, but I think the big thing that they need to do is make sure they cut costs on the playing squad. One of the key things about that is making sure that the wage structure is manageable, is fair, is incentivized, doesn't overpay the players. You know, that's really, really important. And United have made a lot of mistakes in the past, but they have thrown their money at players previously to get them to join. It's ended up with players joining for the wrong circumstances and for the wrong reasons. And this is part of the problem now. This is where it's led United to, and they're still trying to fix it now. So fingers crossed. I hope that those talks can recommence. I would imagine that if Mainoo's in the team and Michael Carrick's there and things are going well, then talks can maybe start again. But I suppose a big deal on this will be who the next manager is as well. I suppose the good thing is now I don't think United will go back down the road of hiring a manager that plays a two in midfield, that plays a back three, that plays. I think they will probably be looking at somebody who plays 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3. I think that we can safely assume that after the endless discussion of the previous back three. I think that's what we can say. And it should make it easier to fit Kobbie Mainoo into this team. So I do think that this is a guy that has a lot of talent, that should be platformed in the right way, that has come through the academy. We know how valuable academy players are, not only to, if you sold them, for example, how much value of their transfer fee goes on the books, but in terms of value of what the club means. I'm sick of talking, and I just did it first. I'm sick of talking about value in like monetary terms. Like, value is feeling as though you can relate. And United fans can really relate to Kobbie Mainoo, and they want him to do well. There's lots of players that will come through the academy, I'm sure, over the next few years. You need to look at that. I've been thinking over the last few days that, JJ Gabriel is in the 18s, and he's way younger than 18, but he's tearing it up, and he can't play yet this season. I think only next year he's able to start playing potentially in the Premier League, and even that might be too soon for him. But I was thinking under Ruben Amorim, like, where does he fit in this team? It doesn't. If Ruben Amorim was there for 5 years, could I see him get in a place in this team in the long term? Potentially not. I think United need to find the right person who has the right ideals and promotes youth. I really know that that is going to be something that the club are really concentrating on and thinking about now, and platforming them in a formation that I think suits the players as well. So Kobbie Mainoo fits into that. You got Harry Amass as well, who's out on loan at Sheffield Wednesday, might go somewhere else in January, but I think he will be reintroduced to the fold at some point. And Kobbie Mainoo as well is a first team player who's in there at the moment, who's obviously older than those guys, but he's already made the jump and he should be in the team for the years to come. So I do hope that they fix that contract and sort it out. I do think that now that Amorim, as Graham said this on the podcast the other week as well, if you checked out the Michael Carrick, how he did at Middlesbrough episode with Graham Bailey, he alluded to this, that it would probably be easier, I suppose, for people at Manchester United like Jason Wilcox to just palm the blame off on Ruben Amorim to say, in terms of like getting the contract terms back on track and getting the contract talks back on track. Ruben Amorim's out of the picture now. We want you to stay. And look, everybody wants Mainoo to stay, I'm sure. We want you to stay, so let's renegotiate this and let's try and find a place. You will be part of this team. And we know how good he is. We know what he offers. And we know that the midfield does need upgrading as well. So long term, you do need to find a partner for him. I'm hoping that United will find one or two midfielders and spend actually like serious money in the summer on preferred choices in midfield. I'm still high on Carlos Baleba, I've got to say. I know Elliot Anderson is a player that a lot of people want. Could United go, let's say they get into the Champions League, could you go and sign both of those and play a 4-3-3? I don't know what's going to happen with Bruno Fernandes. Like if he's playing back in the 10, it'll be a real shame. It'll be a real shame to see him go regardless if he does leave in the summer. But maybe if United get back in the Champions League and Bruno's happy to stay again, maybe you keep him in the 10, you sign one midfielder and sign another player, like a direct replacement for Casemiro, and maybe sign another player to come in and, be the understudy or somebody who can play minutes here and there, or has a good blend of being able to play both positions and you can rotate through them. They might need even more than that as well, given Mamadou Ugarte could also leave because he's not really been good enough. But look, I'm just glad to see that Kobbie has been settled down again. I think I saw a picture of him driving out of Carrington the other day with a big smile on his face, signing autographs out of his car window for kids who are waiting for him. And it is nice to see his expression happy again. And it's only been one game. So it is maybe a bit too early to say that everything is fixed and sorted, but I think it is definitely good news for me that Kobbie, and you're getting these reports now that Kobbie is to stay. Like it makes a lot of sense, really. And I think Michael Carrick is going to be really important in rebuilding and reinstating the reputation of Kobbie Mainoo over the next few months. He wants to go to the World Cup. Well, it might be too late for him, but if he has a storming end to the season, maybe he can force his way into the plans for England. But Manchester United should come first for us, obviously. So I'm just going to be glad to see Kobbie playing in there alongside. Hope he doesn't get injured or whatever. But the big question really has been, are United going to sign a new midfielder in the January transfer window? We know what they tried to do in the summer. We know that they tried to sign Carlos Baleba, but Brighton weren't having any of it. They had a massive fee on Carlos Baleba's head, which United simply couldn't meet. And it probably didn't make much sense to meet either. As much as they have needed a midfielder, you still got Casemiro there. You can't shift until like the next 6 months. So his contract's up in June. And I would imagine, like I say, that he will end up leaving. But it is a real concern for a lot of people that United don't have all that much depth in the midfield area. I've spoken about it all year, about how light they look in that area, how they have just, in a two especially, they need more. I've talked about at length, and this is still valid as well, how United need athletes in there. It's really, really important. Athletes, ball players, players who can carry the ball, players who can pass. Like the all-around midfielder that you need in the modern day, United don't really have one. I'm talking about your Moises Caicedo type of players, your Declan Rice kind of players, or the players that are maybe next in line to get to that level. United need to go get one. And I do think that is the most important thing to keep in mind here, that you absolutely need to make sure that if there's 3 targets, I think there's Elliot Anderson, Carlos Baleba, Adam Wharton as well. Adam Wharton might potentially come back into this conversation now as well. I didn't really think that a United midfield with Ruben Amorim in charge would be suited really to Adam Wharton and the way that they want to do things. Now I'm thinking, well, maybe the doors are open again. Like I don't know which one they're going to go for. I have my preferences and then they change. But I will say this, right? And in the context of the January transfer window, it is very important for me that United do keep their priorities in order. And I don't want them to go and spend 30 million quid in January, really, on a player that may or may not work. You know, if it's it might get them the Champions League, but then that player really is going to be, if United go ahead and sign one of those targets that I talked about just now, probably relegated to 3rd choice in the midfield by the start of next season. I don't really think that's the way to do it. And I do agree with them on making sure that they keep their powder dry in order to get the targets that they know that they want. And that was a big thing, big argument, Ruben Amorim over recruitment and lots of things. We don't know all of the exact ins and outs of that, but I do think recruitment was one of the big issues in that argument that he had with Jason Wilcox, the fact that he wasn't getting strengthening in January. Now it seems as though United might be softening a little bit, but I don't really think that anything is going to change, even though we have had some rumors and reports over the last day or two that they are looking at some potential loan targets. I'll talk through those in a second. But I think now that the midfield has changed, that the coach has changed, that the tactical setup has changed, that there's only 16 games left, United could theoretically get through this period and still have enough with the midfield that they have if they play the system that Michael Carrick wants to play. Now, if you think about it, Kobbie Mainoo and Casemiro is probably going to be your first choice pairing. You do have worries, though, about the fitness and about, injuries can crop up, but injuries can happen at any point. I'm just thinking, when Ruben Amorim was in charge, United didn't have loads of options in that area, and they were required to cover a lot of ground in terms of like getting up and down. I think now you'll probably be able to see, and this is, although Kobbie Mainoo covered a lot of ground in the Manchester derby, I think it's more like shuffling spaces and making sure that he's in the right position at the right time, and you coordinate in the press and that kind of thing. Whereas I think what Ruben Amorim wanted was players in that position who were just like box to box, end of box to end of box, running back and forth all the time, trying to cover every single blade of grass on the pitch. That's what I kind of thought he was trying to get at. Now I think the things have changed, and it probably is easier for players playing in that position to deal with what Michael Carrick is asking of them rather than what Ruben Amorim was asking. There was lots of square pegs and round holes and lots of positions to fix up. But I think that conversation has now changed. And I think Mamadou Ugarte, if he can come in for 15, 20 minutes at the end of matches and do the basics right, it's a big if, obviously. I think, look, this is still a £50 million player or £42 million player that United did end up signing, who is at least combative and can cover ground. He doesn't need to be all singing, all dancing. He just needs to do a job. And I think Michael Carrick has shown maybe over the first game that he's had, that he is more willing to play to the strengths and hide the weaknesses of the players in the United team and in the United squad. So he's talked about platforming them in the right ways. He's talked about making sure that they put their best foot forward. And maybe you see a better version of Mamadou Ugarte for the next 3-4 months. But still, I think the conversation around him probably is still that he does end up leaving if United can find a move for him. He's had some interest from Ajax, and United have batted away loan interest, which is the right move for me as well. I think if you get an offer with serious money for Mamadou Ugarte this month, I think maybe you take it potentially and you do a replacement. But at the same time, I don't think anyone's going to come forward with significant money that would convince United to sell. So I'm thinking that those three probably stay put. And if somebody does get injured, if Casemiro does get injured, then maybe Ugarte needs to step in there. I do think as well, you got Aiden Heaven who's coming through. Does that mean that maybe sometimes now Lisandro Martinez can step into midfield here and there? It's certainly something I'd like to see Carrick try. Maybe that's another option you can use. You've also got, as Graham mentioned on the podcast the other day, that if United are playing against a team that are expected to sit in, maybe you can play Bruno Fernandes in the role Kobbie Mainoo played the other day, and the midfield dynamic would be entirely different still to the one that Ruben Amorim used, even though it is the two same players who are in there. Bruno Fernandes can potentially do a job in there. And then you got Mason Mount as well. Like, I don't know where Mason Mount's going to fit at the moment, but he sees himself as a central midfielder, I think, as well, even though his best position and his best performances recently have come in that left 10 under Ruben Amorim. That position doesn't really exist in this team now. So where does he fit? Now you think about it, and I've just listed like 6 players who I think in this 4-2-3-1 that Carrick plays, I think you probably got like 3 options on each side, really. I don't know if I'm going crazy. I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn or whatever, but that's just the way that I see it. And I kind of get it, really. If the club might be looking at other options, but there aren't really lots of incredible options out there. And I just really would prefer that they didn't waste their money on players that may or may not be good, because we have a lot of those already. Players who may or may not be good. You don't want to add more. I think what United should do in 2026 is try and find players that they know will work, and if they have to pay top dollar for them, try and get the best deal you can, and then build your 11 to start with, and then build it out. Build your strength in reserve. That's the way forward for me. Don't keep going and buying, or I think the conversation around a loan is a bit different, but even loans nowadays come with salary coverage and loan fees, and is it worth it really when you've got 2 players in there, in Kobbie Mainoo and Casemiro, who probably will start most games? Let's say they did get Wilfred Ndidi on loan, or Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who've been linked over the last few days. If they got either of those, would they displace Casemiro or Kobbie Mainoo or Bruno Fernandes in that midfield too? I don't think they would. So all you're doing is buying backup, really, or bringing backup in, and they might not even play, really. There's lots of worries you can have about it. Injuries, and they're completely valid, but everybody gets injuries, And I do think that what I've just outlined there, and the players that I think could maybe step into those positions and do a job as good as, let's say, a Wilfred Ndidi, who has played for Leicester. United could have signed him when he went on a free. Like, I think he didn't go for free in the end, did he? But he was, when Leicester got relegated, he had a very small release clause in his contract. United didn't do anything. He went to Besiktas. Doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I see the potential appeal, but at the same time, if Casemiro is going to play most games, I think all he needs to do is not start one, and then you don't trigger that contract extension that's in his deal. You can put Ugarte in there for 1 game, I'm sure, from the very beginning, and maybe just sub on Casemiro after 5 minutes or something like that. But look, Ndidi, I think, solid Premier League option, obviously. I don't think there's anything in it. I think the latest that I saw before starting to record this podcast was that United have been offered Wilfred Ndidi on loan, but they haven't checked it out yet. They haven't bitten on it. So it remains to be seen. Maybe they do end up entertaining that if the terms are right. And look, if the terms are right on any of these deals and United are paying essentially nothing, or the wages that they're covering are quite small, or the loan fee that they're covering is quite small, yeah, potentially, I think it makes sense. But I don't want to see the club undercut themselves and potentially lose out on a long-term target because of spending that they've done in January. That's the point I've always made around this. And Ruben Loftus-Cheek as well. I don't get it, really. I don't get that one. For me, he looks, in terms of the type of player that he is, maybe he's another Kobbie Mainoo, but he's not going to come in and displace Kobbie Mainoo from the team if he comes in on loan, is he? And all we want to do, and all we talked about all season, is having Kobbie Mainoo come in and play football. We want to see him play football. So I wouldn't go and increase competition in that position. Give him the platform to go and shine. And if he gets injured or gets sent off and gets suspended, I do think you have other players in there who can step in temporarily and do that job. Or I think the big thing here is that United just need to make sure that they take maximum care of their players. They have a very, very light schedule until the end of the season. Very light schedule. Prepare properly for each match. Make sure that you drill the players and keep the players as fit as possible. injury prevention, like if they need to come off, make sure that you do that and make sure that you protect them for the games that are coming up as well. And look, if the situation changes and somebody gets injured against Arsenal at the weekend and they miss the rest of the season, which can always happen, the conversation changes for me. But at this point, I don't really see the need of going out there and absolutely obsessively having to go and sign someone. Otherwise, it's the end of the season. That's just my personal feeling. I don't really think the options are out there, and I don't think United have the money to go and sign one of their key targets now because it's the January window and clubs don't want to sell at this point. If that circumstance changes, it's a different conversation. But at the same time, for now, I just look at that and I think, no, honestly, these are my thoughts now. If you look at those two midfield positions, I think Casemiro, first choice. In terms of the holder, Casemiro, first choice. You got Ugarte in there as well. And you could possibly try Licha Martinez in there, knowing that you've got Aiden Heaven as a left centre-back. Lenny Yoro, where's he going to fit in the team at the moment? Matthias de Ligt is out injured at the moment. He should be back at some point, I would hope. You've got lots of options at centre-back. Luke Shaw can fill in there as well. Because of those options at centre-back, maybe Licha would have the opportunity at some point to step in midfield because I do think he has the tenacity and the ball, the passing range for it. Maybe not the mobility, but it depends what you're asking these lot to do. And then in the other position, you've got Kobbie Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes and potentially Mason Mount who can play in that too as well. Like, I think United have enough for me at the moment to get through until the end of the season based off of the changes that have happened recently. If this was Ruben Amorim, he was still in charge and they were playing the system that Ruben Amorim wanted to play, I think it would be a different conversation. But the circumstances have changed, and now I feel like United have a bit more cover just because of the changes that Michael Carrick has made to what he's asking the players to do and the system that he's playing. But get in the comments and let me know your thoughts on the midfield situation, or maybe a left winger before the end of the transfer window. Who knows? I think there's going to be loans, though. If there's going to be anything surprising, it will probably end up being a loan. But let me know your thoughts on players that United could go and sign. I personally don't think they'll do anything, but we'll see. Things can change. Circumstances can change. And United could definitely, look, in a dream world, they could do with another body for sure. But I think there's a wider context here about the state of the club's finances and making sure that they don't make mistakes and buy players or get players in for the sake of it when they don't necessarily need them and they're not an improvement on what they already have. That's just the way that I see it. But get in the comments, let me know your thoughts. Subscribe to the podcast if you've not done so already. Apple, Google, Spotify, and on YouTube as well. All the links are in the description. Like the video, give 5-star reviews on the audio platforms. Get in the comments like I say. Hit the notification bell as well so you get notifications and never miss an episode drop of the Promise and a Manchester United podcast. And also follow me on social at @_Scott Saunders as well. See you soon, everyone, for another episode of the show. Until next time, thank you.